She was captured, broken, and given to him as property, but he refused to claim her as his wife until the day she stood between him and 1,000 pounds of fury, proving that courage has no master. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you like this story and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The Dakota Territory stretched endlessly under the harsh summer sun of 1875. Its rolling plains dotted with sagebrush and the occasional stand of cottonwoods marking where water could be found. Rachel Price knelt in the dirt outside the Sioux camp, her wrists raw from rope burns, her once fine traveling dress now torn and filthy. 3 weeks had passed since the raid on the wagon train that had been carrying her west to meet her intended husband, a banker in Denver she had never met. That life seemed like a distant dream now. The attack had come at dawn, swift and brutal. Rachel had been traveling with her aunt and uncle, merchants hoping to establish themselves in the growing western territories. She remembered the war cries, the thunder of hooves, the acrid smell of gunpowder, and then nothing but chaos. When the dust settled, her aunt and uncle lay dead, and she had been dragged onto a painted horse, carried away from everything she had ever known. The Lakota Sioux warriors who had taken her brought her to this camp along the banks of the Powder River, where she had spent the past weeks doing whatever menial tasks were demanded of her, hauling water, scraping hides, gathering firewood. Rachel had learned quickly that survival meant obedience, at least outward obedience. At 22 years old, she had been raised in Philadelphia society, taught to play piano, embroider, and speak French. None of those skills mattered here. What mattered was endurance, silence, and making herself as invisible as possible. The women of the camp treated her with a mixture of contempt and pity, while the men largely ignored her existence. She was property now, a captive. Less than the dogs that wandered freely through the camp on this particular morning. Rachel was grinding corn with a stone pestle when she noticed a commotion near the central fire. Warriors were gathering, their voices raised in what sounded like heated discussion. An older man, clearly a leader based on the deference shown to him by others, stood at the center of the group. His weathered face was lined with age and wisdom, his long gray hair adorned with eagle feathers that marked his status. This was Chief Red Cloud, though Rachel had only learned his name through whispered conversations she had overheard. Beside the chief stood a younger warrior who commanded attention without seeming to try. He was tall, his copper skin stretched over lean muscle, his long black hair falling past his shoulders with a single white feather woven into one side. His face was all hard angles and fierce pride, his dark eyes burning with an intensity that made Rachel's breath catch even from a distance. This was Black Eagle, the chief's nephew, and one of the tribe's most respected warriors. Rachel had seen him around the camp, but had been careful never to let her gaze linger. Women like her, captives, did not look directly at men like him. The discussion grew more heated. Rachel could not understand the Lakota language, but she recognized her name when it was spoken, the harsh consonants of Rochelle standing out amid the flowing native words. Her heart began to pound. They were talking about her. Nothing good ever came from being the subject of the warrior's attention. An older woman, one of the few who had shown Rachel any measure of kindness, approached and gestured for her to stand. "Come," the woman said in broken English. "Chief wants you." Rachel's legs felt weak as she followed the woman toward the gathering of warriors. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but there was nowhere to go. The prairie stretched for hundreds of miles in every direction, and she would not survive a day alone out there. She had no choice but to face whatever judgment awaited her. Chief Red Cloud regarded her with eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. When he spoke, his voice was deep and commanding, each word deliberate. The woman who had brought Rachel forward translated haltingly. "Chief says you have been here 3 weeks. You work hard. You do not make trouble." "This is good," Rachel nodded, not trusting her voice. The chief continued speaking, and the translator's expression grew uncomfortable as she relayed his words. Chief says his nephew, Black Eagle, needs wife. Black Eagle is strong warrior, future leader of our people. But Black Eagle has no woman. Chief says you will be Black Eagle's wife. The words hit Rachel like a physical blow. She looked up sharply, her eyes finding Black Eagle in the crowd. His expression was thunderous, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. When he spoke, his voice was low and deadly, and though Rachel could not understand his words, their meaning was unmistakable. He was refusing. The chief's response was equally firm, his tone brooking no argument. The two men faced each other, the tension between them thick enough to cut. Finally, Black Eagle turned his fierce gaze on Rachel, looking at her truly for the first time. What she saw in his eyes made her blood run cold. Not desire, not even curiosity. Only contempt and barely suppressed rage. I will not take a white captive as my wife, Black Eagle said in perfect English, his words clipped and harsh. I will not dishonor myself or my people by lying with the enemy. Rachel felt her face flush hot with humiliation. She had not asked for this any more than he had. She was a prisoner here, with no say in her own fate. The fact that he spoke English surprised her, but his fluency only made his rejection sting more sharply. Chief Red Cloud's expression hardened. He spoke again, his words rapid and sharp. The translator whispered to Rachel, Chief says Black Eagle will obey. It is decided. You belong to Black Eagle now, whether he claims you or not. With that pronouncement, the gathering dispersed. Black Eagle stood rigid for a long moment, his hands clenched into fists at his sides, before turning and striding away without another glance at Rachel. She stood frozen, unsure what to do or where to go. The older woman touched her arm gently. Come, she said. I show you Black Eagle's lodge. You stay there now. The teepee that belonged to Black Eagle was larger than most, positioned in a place of honor within the camp circle. Inside, it was spartanly furnished but clean, with sleeping robes arranged on one side, weapons and tools organized with military precision, and a cold fire pit in the center. The woman gestured around the space. You keep lodge clean. Prepare food. This is your place now. Then she left Rachel alone in the dim interior. Rachel sank down onto the packed earth floor, wrapping her arms around herself. In the span of minutes, her status had shifted from anonymous captive to unwanted wife. She did not know which was worse. At least as a faceless slave, she had been beneath notice. Now she was shackled to a man who despised everything she represented. As the day wore on, Rachel did the only thing she could think to do. She began to organize the teepee, folding the sleeping robes more neatly, arranging the cooking implements, sweeping out the old ashes from the fire pit. It gave her hands something to do while her mind raced with questions and fears. What would happen when Black Eagle returned? Would he force himself on her despite his declared revulsion? Would he beat her? Or would he simply ignore her existence entirely? The sun was setting when Black Eagle finally entered the teepee. Rachel had been preparing a simple meal of dried meat and corn cakes, unsure if he would even eat anything she prepared, but needing to do something useful. He stopped just inside the entrance, his tall frame silhouetted against the fading light outside. For a long moment, he simply stared at her, his expression unreadable. I did not ask for this, Rachel said quietly, surprising herself with her boldness. I do not want this any more than you do. Black Eagle's eyes narrowed. You know nothing of what I want, white woman. You know nothing of what your people have taken from mine. My brother died at the hands of white soldiers. My sister's husband was murdered by settlers who wanted our land. And now my uncle would have me take one of you into my home, into my bed, as if that could somehow bridge the river of blood between us. His words were like arrows, each one finding its mark. Rachel forced herself to meet his gaze, even as tears burned behind her eyes. I have lost people too. My aunt and uncle are dead because of this war between our peoples. I was stolen from my life, from everything I knew. I did not choose to be here. Yet here you are, Black Eagle said coldly. He moved past her to the far side of the teepee, as far from her as the space allowed. You will sleep there. He pointed to a spot near the entrance. You will not speak to me unless spoken to. You will not touch my things. You will not touch me. You are nothing to me, do you understand? Nothing, Rachel nodded, not trusting her voice. Black Eagle settled onto his sleeping robes, turning his back to her in a gesture of complete dismissal. Rachel wrapped herself in the thin blanket that had been left for her and lay down near the teepee entrance, as far from him as possible. The ground was hard beneath her and the night air grew cold, but she barely noticed. Her mind was too full of the impossible situation she found herself in. Over the following days, an uneasy routine established itself. Rachel rose early to rebuild the fire, prepare food, and tend to the teepee. Black Eagle left at dawn to hunt or train with the other warriors, often not returning until well after dark. When he was present, he acted as though she did not exist, speaking not a single word to her, eating the food she prepared without acknowledgement, and maintaining his position on the far side of the teepee. It was as if he had erected an invisible wall between them, one he had no intention of allowing her to breach. The women of the camp treated Rachel differently now. Some showed her slightly more respect as Black Eagle's woman, even if the marriage had not been consummated. Others seemed to resent her elevated status, making her tasks more difficult when they could. The older woman who had shown her kindness, whose name Rachel learned was Singing Bird, occasionally offered guidance on Lakota customs and cooking methods. It was Singing Bird who explained that Black Eagle had been deeply scarred by the loss of his family members to white violence. That his hatred ran so deep, Black Eagle's heart as winter storm, Singing Bird said one morning as they worked together preparing hides. Frozen, dangerous. But even winter storms must end. You must be patient, like spring waiting beneath snow. Rachel was not sure she possessed that kind of patience. But what choice did she have? She threw herself into learning everything she could about surviving in this new world. She watched how the other women prepared food, how they tanned hides, how they gathered medicinal plants from the prairie. Her hands, once soft and carefully tended, grew calloused and strong. Her skin darkened under the relentless sun. And slowly, grudgingly, she began to understand fragments of the Lakota language. 3 weeks after the chief's pronouncement, Rachel was gathering firewood alone in a stand of trees about a quarter-mile from camp. It was late afternoon, the air thick with the promise of rain. She had ventured farther than usual, following a dry creek bed where dead branches were plentiful. She was bent over, arms full of wood when she heard it. A sound that turned her blood to ice, the angry, guttural roar of a bear. Rachel froze, every muscle in her body locking in primal fear. Slowly, carefully, she turned her head. 30 yards away, emerging from a thicket of wild plum bushes, was a massive grizzly bear. The animal was huge, easily 8 feet tall if it stood on its hind legs, its brown fur rippling over powerful muscles. And it was staring directly at her. Every story Rachel had ever heard about bears flooded her mind. Do not run. Do not make eye contact. Make yourself big. Make noise. Or was it stay quiet? Her mind raced in panic circles as the bear took a step toward her, then another. It swung its massive head from side to side, testing the air. Rachel's arms opened, and the firewood clattered to the ground. The sudden noise made the bear pause, then grunt. It did not like the sound. Rachel began to back away slowly, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. The bear watched her, its small eyes tracking her movement. For a moment, she thought it might let her go. Then the wind shifted, and Rachel realized with horror that she was now downwind of the animal. The bear caught her scent fully and let out another roar. This one unmistakably aggressive. It charged. Rachel screamed and ran, knowing it was the worst thing she could do, but unable to stop herself. Behind her, she could hear the bear crashing through the underbrush, moving far faster than something that size should be able to move. She would never make it back to camp. She was going to die here, torn apart by this beast. Then she heard a shout, strong and commanding, in Lakota. Black Eagle appeared as if conjured from the earth itself, positioning himself between Rachel and the charging bear. He had his bow drawn, an arrow nocked and ready, his stance wide and steady. He shouted again, trying to divert the bear's attention from Rachel to himself. It worked. The grizzly veered toward this new threat, seeing Black Eagle as the greater challenge. Black Eagle released his arrow. It flew true, striking the bear in the shoulder, but the wound only enraged the animal further. The bear reared up on its hind legs, towering over the warrior, and roared its fury to the sky. Black Eagle knocked another arrow, but Rachel could see what he could not from his position. The bear's massive paw was already sweeping toward him, claws extended, moving with terrible speed. If that blow connected, it would tear Black Eagle apart. Rachel did not think. She simply moved. Grabbing a heavy branch from the ground, she ran forward screaming at the top of her lungs, swinging the branch at the bear's exposed side. The impact was like hitting a boulder, the shock of it reverberating up her arms, but it served its purpose. The bear dropped to all fours and spun toward her, momentarily distracted from Black Eagle. In that instant, Black Eagle fired again. This arrow sank deep into the bear's chest, finding something vital. The animal staggered, roared once more, then turned and lumbered back into the forest, trailing blood. It had decided these humans were more trouble than they were worth. Silence fell over the clearing, broken only by Rachel's harsh breathing and the distant sound of the wounded bear crashing through the underbrush. Black Eagle lowered his bow slowly, then turned to look at Rachel. His expression was complex, layers of emotion flickering across his features too quickly for her to read. Shock, confusion, and perhaps, just perhaps, the faintest glimmer of respect. "You should not have been out here alone," he said finally, his voice rough. "It was foolish. You would have been killed," Rachel replied, her voice shaking. The adrenaline was draining from her body now, leaving her weak and trembling. "It was going to hit you." Black Eagle stared at her for a long moment. "You saved my life," he said, and the words seemed to cost him something. "Why?" Rachel met his eyes directly. "Because no one deserves to die like that. Not even someone who hates me." Something shifted in Black Eagle's expression, a crack in the frozen armor he wore around his heart. He opened his mouth to speak, then seemed to think better of it. Instead, he picked up her scattered firewood, gathering it efficiently, then gestured toward the camp. "Come, it will be dark soon, and the bear may return." They walked back to camp side by side, the first time they had walked together as anything other than master and unwanted slave. Rachel's hands were still shaking, her mind replaying those terrifying moments over and over. She had faced down a charging grizzly bear. She had saved the life of a man who despised her. And in doing so, something had changed between them, though she could not yet name what that something was. The camp buzzed with whispers by the time Black Eagle and Rachel returned from the forest. Word of the bear encounter spread like wildfire through the circle of teepees, growing more dramatic with each retelling. By sunset, some versions had Rachel single-handedly wrestling the grizzly to the ground, while others painted Black Eagle as having killed the beast with his bare hands. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in between. But truth mattered less than the fact that something significant had occurred. Rachel sat inside Black Eagle's teepee that evening, her hands finally steady enough to prepare their meal. She had scrubbed the dirt and pine sap from her skin at the river, but her dress bore new tears from her desperate run through the underbrush. Her arms ached where the tree branch had connected with the bear's ribs, and she knew bruises would bloom there by morning. Still, she was alive. They both were. Black Eagle entered as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky crimson. He carried something wrapped in deerskin, which he set down carefully near the fire. For the first time since she had been forced into his lodge, he did not immediately retreat to his side of the teepee. Instead, he settled across the fire from her, close enough that she could see the dried blood on his buckskin shirt from where he had field-dressed the deer he had killed earlier that day. "The bear will not survive," he said without preamble. "I tracked its blood trail for 2 miles. It goes to die somewhere deep in the forest." Rachel nodded, not sure what response he expected. She ladled stew into a wooden bowl and extended it toward him. This time, when he took it, his fingers brushed hers briefly. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her. "You asked me why," Rachel said quietly, surprising herself with her boldness. "Earlier you asked why I saved you." Black Eagle's dark eyes fixed on her face. "And you said no one deserves to die like that. But there is more you did not say." Rachel considered her words carefully. "When I was a child in Philadelphia, my father took me to the docks once. I saw a man fall into the water and he could not swim. Everyone just watched him drown. They said it was not their concern, that he was probably drunk, that he had made his own choices. My father jumped in anyway. He saved that man's life." She paused, remembering the way her mother had scolded her father for ruining his good suit, while her father had simply smiled and said some things mattered more than cloth. "He told me that day that when you have the power to help someone and you choose not to, you are just as responsible for what happens as if you had caused it yourself. So when I saw that bear about to strike you, I could not just stand there. I would not." Black Eagle was silent for a long moment, his stew forgotten. "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was," Rachel said softly. "He died when I was 16. Pneumonia. And your mother remarried within a year to a merchant who saw me as another mouth to feed. When the opportunity came to send me west to marry the banker in Denver, they were eager to be rid of me." Rachel laughed bitterly. "I suppose they got their wish, just not in the way they imagined." Black Eagle set down his bowl. "I have been cruel to you," he said, the admission clearly difficult for him. "You are right that you did not choose to be here. You are a captive, same as the women my people have lost to white soldiers and settlers." Rachel met his gaze. "Does knowing that change anything?" "I do not know," Black Eagle answered honestly. "My uncle commands that you be my wife. I have refused because in my heart, I see only the white soldiers who killed my brother, the settlers who murdered my sister's husband. When I look at you, I see them, and now," Rachel pressed. Black Eagle's jaw tightened. "Now I see a woman who could have run to safety, but instead ran toward danger to save the life of a man who has treated her with nothing but contempt. This troubles me." "Why should it trouble you?" "Because it is easier to hate you when I can believe all white people are cowards and killers," Black Eagle said bluntly. "What you did today does not fit into the story I have told myself." Rachel absorbed this, understanding the conflict raging behind his stoic exterior. "I cannot speak for all white people any more than you can speak for all of your people. I can only speak for myself. And I am telling you that I do not want to be your enemy." Black Eagle studied her for a long moment. "What do you want?" It was a fair question, and Rachel considered it carefully. "I want to survive. I want to find some measure of peace in this life that has been forced upon both of us. And perhaps, if we are fortunate, we might find a way to exist in the same space without hatred." "You ask for much. I ask only for what you would want if our positions were reversed," Rachel countered. "Would you not want your captor to see you as a person rather than simply as the enemy?" Black Eagle's expression shifted, something like respect flickering in his eyes. "You are braver than I gave you credit for. Or perhaps more foolish. I have not decided which. They are often the same thing," Rachel said. Managing a small smile, Black Eagle surprised her by returning it. A brief quirk of his lips that transformed his harsh features into something almost approachable. Then he reached for the deerskin bundle he had brought in earlier and unwrapped it. Inside was a dress of soft doeskin, beautifully made with intricate beadwork along the yoke in patterns of blue and white. Singing Bird made this, he explained. She said your clothing is not suitable for our life here. I was to give it to you days ago, but he paused. I did not want you to be comfortable. I wanted you to suffer as my people have suffered. Rachel reached out tentatively and touched the soft leather. It was the most beautiful thing anyone had given her in years. And now I think perhaps you have suffered enough, Black Eagle said quietly. Wear this. It will be better for the work you must do. Rachel took the dress, her throat tight with unexpected emotion. Thank you, Black Eagle nodded curtly, as if embarrassed by his moment of kindness. He returned to his meal, and they ate in silence, but it was a different quality of silence than before. Less hostile. Almost comfortable. That night, for the first time since she had been brought to his lodge, Black Eagle spoke to her before they slept. The grizzly is a sacred animal to my people, he said into the darkness. To face one and survive brings great medicine, great power. That you faced one to save another's life, this will be remembered. Rachel lay on her thin blanket near the entrance, wearing the new doeskin dress that fit her surprisingly well. I do not feel powerful. I feel lucky to be alive. Luck and courage are cousins, Black Eagle replied. Both are necessary for survival. Rachel wanted to ask him more. About his brother, about his beliefs, about the future that stretched before them, uncertain and fraught. But she sensed he had shared all he could for one night. Good night, Black Eagle, she said softly. There was a pause, and then his voice came through the darkness, slightly less cold than before. Good night, Rachel. It was the first time he had spoken her name without contempt. And Rachel fell asleep with that small victory warming her more effectively than any fire could. The following days brought subtle but significant changes. Black Eagle no longer avoided the teepee during all waking hours. He began teaching Rachel to speak Lakota properly, correcting her pronunciation with patience she had not known he possessed. In turn, she shared stories of her life before, carefully avoiding topics that might remind him too sharply of the divisions between their peoples. She told him about books she had read, music she had heard, the great buildings of Philadelphia that scraped the sky. Black Eagle listened with an attention that suggested genuine interest rather than mere politeness. He shared his own stories as well, tales of hunts and raids, of Lakota heroes, and the sacred beliefs that governed his people's understanding of the world. Rachel learned that the Lakota saw themselves not as owners of the land, but as part of it. No more important than the buffalo or the eagle or the grass itself. Your people want to own everything, Black Eagle said one afternoon as they sat outside the teepee. Rachel, working on a pair of moccasins Singing Bird, was teaching her to make. They put marks on paper and say this land is mine, that water is mine. But how can anyone own the earth? It is like trying to own the sky. Rachel threaded her bone needle carefully through the leather. I suppose we see it differently. We believe that if we improve the land, build upon it, plant crops, then we have earned the right to it. But the land was already perfect, Black Eagle argued. The buffalo grazed here for generations beyond counting. The rivers ran clean. The prairie provided everything needed for life. Your improvements destroy what was already good. Rachel had no answer to this. She had seen the settlements spreading across the frontier, the way they displaced not just the native peoples, but the animals and plants as well. She had always accepted it as progress, as civilization advancing. But listening to Black Eagle describe the world his people were losing, she began to understand that perhaps progress for some meant devastation for others. I cannot change what my people do, Rachel said finally. I cannot stop the westward movement or the settlements or the treaties that are made and broken. I am just one woman, One woman who saved a life when she could have run, Black Eagle reminded her. Never underestimate what one person can do. Their relationship was evolving, though Rachel could not have said precisely what it was becoming. Not husband and wife in the traditional sense, certainly. Black Eagle still maintained his distance physically, still slept on the far side of the teepee. But they were no longer strangers, no longer quite enemies. They were something in between, feeling their way toward an understanding neither had expected to find. 2 weeks after the bear incident, Black Eagle invited Rachel to accompany him on a short hunting trip.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you.
You should learn to track game, he explained. If something were to happen to me, you would need to feed yourself. Rachel suspected there was more to the invitation than practical concerns, but she accepted readily. They left camp at dawn, riding double on Black Eagle's painted stallion. Rachel had grown more comfortable on horseback, though she still felt clumsy compared to the Lakota riders who seemed to be born in the saddle. Black Eagle took her to a meadow several miles from camp where deer came to graze in the early morning. He showed her how to read tracks in the soft earth, how to determine the age and sex of the animal from the depth and spacing of the hoofprints. He taught her to move silently through the forest, to become part of the landscape rather than an intruder upon it. The deer will sense your presence before they see you, he explained in a low voice as they crouched behind a fallen log. You must quiet not just your body, but your spirit. Become like the stone, like the tree. No thoughts of yesterday or tomorrow, only this moment. Rachel tried to do as he instructed, forcing her racing mind to still. It was harder than any physical task she had undertaken. Her thoughts kept drifting to her old life, to the future, to the strange man crouched beside her whose presence made her heart beat faster for reasons she did not want to examine too closely. You are thinking too loudly, Black Eagle whispered, a hint of amusement in his voice. I can hear your thoughts from here. I am trying, Rachel protested softly. Then try less. Simply be. Somehow his words helped. Rachel let her breathing slow, let her awareness expand to take in the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a hawk, the scent of pine and earth. And then, as if materializing from the morning mist, a doe stepped into the meadow. Black Eagle's hand touched Rachel's arm gently, directing her attention. The doe was magnificent, her coat sleek and healthy, her movements graceful as she bent to crop the grass. Black Eagle raised his bow slowly, drew back the arrow. For a moment, Rachel wanted to shout, to warn the deer, to prevent the death about to occur. But she understood that this was survival, that the deer's life would feed Black Eagle's people, just as the plants the deer ate sustained the deer. The arrow flew true. The doe dropped quickly, her death as clean as such things could be. Black Eagle stood and approached the fallen animal. To Rachel's surprise, he knelt beside it and spoke in Lakota, his voice solemn and respectful. When he finished, he looked up at Rachel. I thanked her for giving her life so that we may live, he explained. We waste nothing, dishonor nothing. Her meat will feed us, her hide will clothe us, her bones will become tools. She will continue in us. Rachel felt tears prick her eyes at the simple dignity of the ritual. In all her years attending church in Philadelphia, listening to sermons about dominion over the beasts of the field, she had never heard anything that resonated as deeply as Black Eagle's prayer of gratitude to the deer. As they worked together to prepare the deer for transport back to camp, Rachel became aware that they were functioning as a unit, anticipating each other's movements, working in harmony. Black Eagle showed her how to make the cuts properly, how to preserve the hide, how to save the organs that would be used for various purposes. It was bloody, difficult work, but Rachel did not shy from it. You learn quickly, Black Eagle observed as they washed their hands in a nearby stream. Most white women would faint at such things. Most white women have not had to learn survival, Rachel replied. We are taught to be delicate, decorative, useful only for bearing children and managing households. You are more than that, Black Eagle said. And the compliment, coming from him, meant more than any flattery Rachel had received in her former life. On the ride back to camp, Black Eagle asked, "Do you miss your old life?" Rachel considered the question honestly. "I miss some things, music, books, the comfort of knowing what each day would bring. But," she paused, searching for the right words, "I do not miss feeling useless. In Philadelphia, I was decoration. Here, I have purpose, even if it is just survival." "You have more than that," Black Eagle said. "You have earned respect. The women speak well of you now. They say you work hard, learn fast, do not complain." "And the men?" Rachel asked, then immediately wished she had not. Black Eagle was silent for a long moment. "The men see that their future chief's woman is strong." "This is good, future chief's woman." The words hung between them, laden with implications neither was ready to fully explore. Rachel was acutely aware of Black Eagle's body behind hers on the horse, his arms steady around her waist to keep her secure. She could feel the heat of him through the doeskin dress, could smell the combination of leather and sage and something uniquely him. When they arrived back at camp, several warriors came to help carry the deer. There was much approving talk about the size and quality of the animal. Black Eagle deflected the praise, saying simply that the spirits had been generous today. But Rachel noticed the way his hand lingered on her shoulder as he helped her dismount. Noticed the way his eyes followed her as she went to help Singing Bird prepare the deer meat for the camp. That night, after the meat had been distributed and the hide stretched for tanning, Black Eagle and Rachel sat by their fire eating the venison that Rachel had seasoned with wild herbs Singing Bird had taught her to recognize. The meat was tender, flavored with smoke and the essence of the prairie itself. "This is good," Black Eagle said. "You are becoming a good cook." "I had an excellent teacher," Rachel replied, meaning both Singing Bird and Black Eagle himself, who had shown her which woods gave the best flavor to meat, how to control the heat of the fire. Black Eagle set down his food and looked at her directly. "I have been thinking about what happened with the bear. About what you did and why you did it." Rachel's heart began to beat faster. And I have decided that my uncle was perhaps wiser than I gave him credit for," Black Eagle said slowly, as if the admission cost him something. "He saw something I was too blind with anger to see." "What did he see?" Rachel asked softly. Black Eagle reached across the space between them and took her hand. It was the first time he had touched her with tenderness rather than necessity. His palm was rough with calluses, warm and strong. He saw that strength comes in many forms. That courage is not only found on the battlefield. That sometimes the bravest act is to open your heart to someone you have been taught to hate. Rachel's breath caught. "Black Eagle, I am not saying I do not still feel anger toward your people," he continued, his thumb moving gently across her knuckles. "I am not saying the pain of my losses has vanished. But I am saying that perhaps you are not your people any more than I am only a warrior. Perhaps we are both more than the war that brought us together." Rachel felt tears slide down her cheeks. "I have not asked you to forget your anger or your pain. I would never ask that of you. I know," Black Eagle said. "That is why I find myself able to release some of it. You do not demand my forgiveness, so I find myself wanting to give it." He moved closer, still holding her hand, until they sat side by side. "I cannot promise this will be easy. My heart is still half frozen with grief and rage. But you have begun to thaw it, and I find I do not want to stop you." Rachel turned to face him fully, seeing in his eyes a vulnerability he had never shown before. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that if you are willing, I would like to try to be truly your husband," Black Eagle said. "Not because my uncle commands it, but because I choose it. Because you have shown me that you are worthy of being chosen." Rachel's tears flowed freely now, tears of relief and hope and a dozen emotions she could not name. "I am willing," she whispered. "I have been willing since the day I saw that you were more than your anger. That underneath it was a good man trying to protect his people and honor his losses." Black Eagle raised his hand and gently wiped away her tears with his thumb. "Then we will find our path together, one step at a time." When he leaned forward and kissed her, it was soft and tentative, a question rather than a demand. Rachel answered by pressing closer, her hands coming up to rest against his chest where she could feel his heart beating as rapidly as her own. The kiss deepened, sweet and searching, full of promise and possibility. When they finally pulled apart, Black Eagle rested his forehead against hers. "I cannot give you an easy life, Rachel. Our peoples are at war, and that war grows worse each season. There will be hardship and danger, I know," Rachel said. "But I would rather face hardship and danger with you than safety and comfort without you." Black Eagle smiled, a true smile that transformed his entire face. "When did you become so brave, golden-haired woman?" "I think it was when I faced a charging bear," Rachel said, smiling back through her tears. "Everything else seems manageable after that." They held each other as the fire burned low, two people from different worlds finding unexpected solace in each other's arms. Outside, the prairie stretched endlessly under the stars, indifferent to human divisions and conflicts. And inside Black Eagle's teepee, something new was beginning. Fragile as a seedling but rooted in courage and watered with hope. The first frost came early that year, painting the prairie grasses silver in the pre-dawn light. Rachel woke to find Black Eagle already dressed, checking his weapons with the methodical precision she had come to recognize as his preparation for something serious. She sat up, pulling a buffalo robe around her shoulders against the morning chill. "What is happening?" she asked, noting the tension in his shoulders. Black Eagle glanced at her, his expression grave. "Scouts returned last night. There's a cavalry unit 3 days' ride from here, moving in our direction. 50 soldiers, maybe more." Rachel's stomach tightened with dread. In the month since she and Black Eagle had truly begun their marriage, she had allowed herself to forget the larger conflict that surrounded them. The warmth of their growing bond had created an illusion of safety, a bubble where the outside world could not intrude. That bubble had just burst. "Will they attack the camp?" Rachel asked, though she already knew the answer. Black Eagle's jaw clenched. "If they find us, yes. They do not distinguish between warriors and families, between those who have raided and those who have kept peace. To them, we are all the same." He finished checking his bow and turned to face her fully. "The council meets this morning to decide whether we move camp or prepare to fight. Chief Red Cloud will want my counsel." Rachel rose and went to him, placing her hands on his chest. "What will you advise?" "I will advise that we move," Black Eagle said, covering her hands with his own. "We have women, children, elders who cannot fight. If we can avoid battle, we should." Relief flooded through Rachel. "That is wise but not easy," Black Eagle replied. "Many of the younger warriors want to fight. They are tired of running, tired of being pushed from our lands. They will see moving as cowardice, but you do not care what they think," Rachel said, knowing him well enough now to understand his pragmatism. "I care what keeps our people alive," Black Eagle corrected. "Pride is worthless to the dead," he kissed her forehead, a gesture that had become familiar in recent weeks, then left for the council meeting. Rachel dressed quickly in her doeskin clothing, now as comfortable to her as her Philadelphia dresses had once been, and set about her morning tasks. But her mind was far from the mundane work of building up the fire and preparing corn cakes. Singing Bird found her an hour later, her weathered face creased with worry. "You have heard about the soldiers," the older woman said, not bothering with preamble. Rachel nodded. "Black Eagle told me this morning. He's with the council now." Singing Bird sat heavily on a log near the fire. "This is bad timing. We have just begun to store food for winter. If we move now, we leave much behind. But if you stay and fight," Rachel began. Then many die, Singing Bird finished bluntly. I have lived through 3 such battles. Each time we lose more than we can afford to lose. She looked at Rachel with eyes that had seen too much suffering. Your people are like water flowing downhill. They cannot be stopped, only redirected for a time. They will take all the land eventually. Rachel wanted to argue, to defend her people, but she could not. Everything she had learned in her months with the Lakota had shown her the inexorable tide of westward expansion. The broken treaties, the deliberate destruction of the buffalo herds that sustained the Plains tribes. Singing Bird was not wrong. I am sorry, Rachel said quietly. For what my people have done to yours. Singing Bird studied her for a long moment. You are not responsible for what others do, child. You are only responsible for your own actions. And your actions have been good. She reached out and squeezed Rachel's hand. Black Eagle is different since you came, lighter, he smiles now. Before, he was like stone, hard and cold. You have warmed him. Rachel felt her eyes sting with unexpected tears. He has changed me too. I was a decoration before, something pretty to look at, but useless. Here, I have found purpose. You have found yourself, Singing Bird corrected. There is a difference. The council meeting lasted until midday. When Black Eagle emerged, his face was set in grim lines. He found Rachel helping the other women prepare pemmican, the preserved meat mixture that would sustain them through the coming winter. He drew her aside, away from curious ears. We move tomorrow at dawn, he said without preamble. Red Cloud agreed that discretion is the better choice. We go north, toward the Bighorn Mountains where the terrain will make it harder for cavalry to follow. How long will the journey take? Rachel asked. A week, maybe more, depending on the weather and how quickly the elders can travel. Black Eagle's hand found hers, his grip tight. It will be hard, Rachel. Cold, dangerous. We will have to leave many things behind. I understand, Rachel said, though her heart sank at the thought of the long, difficult journey ahead. What do you need me to do? Black Eagle's expression softened slightly. Help the other women pack what can be carried. Food, weapons, medicine, warm clothing. Everything else must be left. He paused, his dark eyes searching her face. I know this is not the life you imagined when you came west. Nothing about my life has been what I imagined, Rachel replied honestly. But I would not change it now. Not if it means losing you. Black Eagle pulled her close, holding her tightly for a moment, before releasing her and striding away to help with the preparations. Rachel watched him go, memorizing the proud set of his shoulders, the confident way he moved. Fear curled in her stomach, fear of what lay ahead. Of the soldiers pursuing them, of the unknown dangers of the winter journey. The camp transformed into controlled chaos as families began the heartbreaking process of deciding what could be taken and what must be abandoned. Rachel worked alongside the other women, rolling buffalo robes, packing dried meat and corn into parfleches, gathering the tools and implements essential for survival. She had learned enough about Lakota life to understand what was necessary and what was merely convenient. As afternoon faded toward evening, Rachel took a moment to rest, her arms aching from the unaccustomed labor of taking down and packing teepee coverings. She watched the children playing one last time in the clearing where they had spent the summer, their laughter bittersweet given what tomorrow would bring. Many of these children had been born in this camp, knew no other home. A young warrior named Tall Elk approached her, his expression hostile. He was one of those who had argued for fighting rather than fleeing, and he had made no secret of his contempt for Black Eagle's white wife. "This is your fault," he said in heavily accented English, his voice dripping with venom. "The soldiers come because of you. You are a spy, leading them to us." Rachel straightened, meeting his glare without flinching. "I have been nowhere near any soldiers. I have had no contact with any white people since I came here. You are white," Tall Elk spat. "That is contact enough. Your people hunt us like animals, and you bring them to our doorstep. Enough. Black Eagle's voice cut through the tension like a knife. He stepped between Rachel and Tall Elk, his posture radiating controlled danger. You will not speak to my wife with such disrespect. Tall Elk did not back down. She is a weakness, Black Eagle, the other warriors say it. Your judgment is clouded by her pale beauty. You counsel running like rabbits instead of fighting like men. Black Eagle's hand moved to his knife, and for a terrible moment, Rachel thought blood would be spilled. But then Chief Red Cloud's voice rang out across the camp. Tall Elk, come. The young warrior hesitated, clearly wanting to continue the confrontation, but even his pride could not override a direct summons from the chief. He spat at Rachel's feet before stalking away. Black Eagle started after him, fury in every line of his body, but Rachel caught his arm. Let it go, she said quietly. He is frightened and angry, lashing out at the nearest target. Fighting him will only prove his point. Black Eagle turned to her, his eyes blazing. He insulted you. I cannot let that stand. You can and you will, Rachel said firmly. Because starting a fight within the tribe the night before we must all flee together is foolish. You taught me that wisdom is knowing when to fight and when to walk away. Black Eagle's jaw worked, but slowly the tension drained from his shoulders. You have learned too well, wife. Now you use my own teachings against me. Is that not what a good student does? Rachel asked, managing a small smile despite her racing heart. Black Eagle's expression softened, and he touched her cheek gently. You are right, as you often are. But if he speaks to you like that again, then you will defend my honor appropriately, Rachel finished. But not tonight. Tonight we have more important concerns. As darkness fell, the camp settled into an uneasy quiet. Fires were kept small to avoid drawing attention, and the usual evening songs and stories were forgone in favor of anxious preparation. Rachel and Black Eagle worked together to finish packing their belongings, moving in the synchronized rhythm they had developed over recent weeks. I spoke with my uncle, Black Eagle said as they secured the last bundle. He wants you to ride with the women and children when we move. I will be with the warriors, watching our back trail for signs of pursuit. Rachel had expected this, but still felt a flutter of anxiety at the thought of being separated from him. How long will you be gone? I will rejoin the main group each night, Black Eagle assured her. But during the day, I must be where I can see danger coming. He took both her hands in his expression serious. If something happens, if the soldiers catch up to us, you must promise me something. What? Rachel asked, though she dreaded the answer. You must tell them who you are, Black Eagle said. Tell them you are Rachel Price, a captive, that you were taken from a wagon train. They will return you to your people. No, Rachel said immediately, pulling her hands free. I will not leave you. Rachel, Black Eagle began, but she cut him off. I am not a captive anymore, she said fiercely. I am your wife. I chose you, chose this life. I will not pretend otherwise to save myself while you and your people face danger. Black Eagle cupped her face in his hands, his eyes shining with an emotion too deep for words. You foolish, brave woman. Do you not understand that you are the most precious thing I have? I could not bear to lose you. Then do not ask me to leave you, Rachel whispered. Whatever comes, we face it together. Black Eagle kissed her then, deep and desperate, as if he could somehow keep her safe through the strength of his embrace alone. When they finally parted, both were breathing hard. Together, Black Eagle agreed hoarsely. But you must promise to be careful, to stay with Singing Bird and do what she tells you. I promise, Rachel said, and she meant it. She had no desire to be reckless, not when she had finally found something worth living for. They made love that night with an intensity born of uncertainty, each touch and kiss a defiance of the danger that waited on the horizon. Afterward, they lay tangled together beneath the buffalo robes, Rachel's head on Black Eagle's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Tell me about the Bighorn Mountains, Rachel said softly, needing to focus on something other than her fear. Black Eagle's hand stroked through her hair, the gesture soothing. They are sacred to my people. The peaks touch the sky, and the valleys are full of game. There are hot springs where the earth's blood comes to the surface, warm even in the deepest winter. It sounds beautiful. It is, Black Eagle agreed. But it is also harsh. The winters there are brutal, the summers short. It is a place that demands strength. Then we will be strong, Rachel said with more confidence than she felt. We will survive. Yes, Black Eagle murmured, his arms tightening around her. We will. Dawn came too quickly, gray and cold with the promise of more frost to come. The camp stirred to life in the Prygon darkness, families loading travois with their packed belongings, children bundled against the chill. Rachel helped strike Black Eagle's teepee, folding the heavy buffalo hide covering with practiced efficiency. Everything she and Black Eagle owned now fit onto a single travois that would be pulled by one of their horses. Chief Red Cloud moved through the camp, speaking quiet words of encouragement to his people. When he reached Rachel, he stopped and regarded her with eyes that seemed to see into her soul. You have brought change to my nephew, he said in careful English. Good change. He is a better leader for knowing you. He has changed me as well. Grandfather, Rachel replied, using the term of respect she had learned. I am grateful for the chance to be part of your people. Red Cloud nodded slowly. The path ahead will test all of us. Some may not survive to see the bighorns. But this is the way of things. We endure because we must. He placed a weathered hand on her shoulder briefly before moving on. Rachel felt the weight of his words settle over her like a mantle. She was no longer an outsider to be tolerated. She was part of the tribe now, subject to the same dangers and hardships as everyone else. As the sun crested the horizon, painting the frost-covered prairie in shades of pink and gold, the Lakota camp began to move. It was a strange and solemn procession, over 100 people with their horses and dogs, their travois loaded with everything they owned. Rachel rode a gentle mare that Black Eagle had given her, staying close to Singing Bird and the other women as instructed. Black Eagle and a dozen other warriors hung back, watching the camp's back trail for any sign of pursuit. Rachel turned in her saddle to look at him one last time before the distance grew too great. Even from far away, she could pick him out, sitting tall and proud on his painted stallion. As if feeling her gaze, he raised one hand in farewell. Rachel returned the gesture, her throat tight with emotion. The journey north was grueling from the start. The elderly struggled to keep pace despite riding on travois. Children whimpered with cold and exhaustion. The women sang songs to keep spirits up, but the melodies were tinged with sorrow for the homes they were leaving behind. Rachel learned the songs by listening, adding her voice to the chorus even when she did not understand all the words. By midday, they had covered perhaps 10 miles, a painfully slow pace. Rachel's legs ached from hours in the saddle, her hands numb despite her gloves. Around her, the prairie stretched endlessly, brown grass waving in the wind beneath a sky heavy with clouds. Snow was coming. She could feel it in the air. When they finally stopped to rest and water the horses, Rachel helped distribute food to the children, smiling at their resilience despite the hardship. A little girl, no more than 4 years old, looked up at her with solemn dark eyes. Are the bad men coming? She asked in Lakota. Rachel understood enough to answer.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us now. Back to the story.
The warriors are watching for them. You are safe. The child seemed satisfied with this answer and ran off to play with the other children. Singing Bird appeared at Rachel's elbow. You spoke well to her. Children need reassurance in troubled times. I wish I felt as confident as I sounded, Rachel admitted. Singing Bird smiled grimly. That is the secret of leadership. Projecting strength even when you feel weak. As afternoon wore on, The promised snow began to fall, light at first but steadily increasing. The temperature dropped sharply, and Rachel pulled her buffalo robe tighter around her shoulders. The landscape became a blur of white, making it difficult to see more than a few yards ahead. The column slowed further, families huddling together for warmth as they pressed onward. Black Eagle and the other warriors caught up to the main group as darkness fell. They had seen no sign of immediate pursuit, but that brought little comfort. The soldiers could be a day behind or two. There was no way to know. The camp made a cold stop that night, fires forbidden for fear of drawing attention. Families huddled together under buffalo robes, sharing body heat against the bitter cold. Black Eagle found Rachel and immediately pulled her close, his face rough with cold against her cheek. "You survived the day," he said, and she could hear the relief in his voice. "Barely," Rachel admitted, her teeth chattering. "Is it always this cold?" "This is nothing," Black Eagle said, but there was dark humor in his tone. "Wait until we reach the mountains." Despite her exhaustion and discomfort, Rachel found herself laughing. "You certainly know how to encourage a woman." "I know how to tell the truth," Black Eagle corrected. "But I also know you are strong enough to endure whatever comes." They slept that night, pressed together for warmth, along with Singing Bird and 2 other families who shared their camp space. Rachel drifted in and out of fitful sleep, waking often to the sound of wind howling across the prairie and the soft crying of cold, frightened children. The second day was worse than the first. The snow continued, now ankle-deep and making travel treacherous. One of the travois broke, its load spilling across the white landscape. Precious time was lost redistributing the contents and making repairs. An elderly man collapsed from exhaustion and had to be carried on horseback, slowing the column even further. By the time Black Eagle returned that evening, his face was set in grim lines. "The soldiers are following our trail," he reported to Chief Red Cloud, though his words carried to those nearby. "They are perhaps half a day behind us now." A ripple of fear ran through the gathered people. Red Cloud's expression remained calm, but Rachel could see the worry in his eyes. "Can we outrun them?" "Not at our current pace," Black Eagle said bluntly. "Not with the elderly and children. We need to find a place to make a stand or find a way to slow them down." "I will not sacrifice our people to buy time," Red Cloud said firmly. Black Eagle nodded. "I would not ask you to. But if we continue as we are, they will overtake us within 2 days." The council convened quickly, and Rachel watched from a distance as the men debated their options. She could see the tension in Black Eagle's shoulders, the way his hand kept straying to his weapons. He was preparing for battle, she realized with a cold certainty. He expected to have to fight. When he returned to her side, Rachel did not ask what had been decided. She simply held him, trying to memorize the feel of his arms around her, the scent of leather and smoke that clung to his skin. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "I love you." It was the first time she had spoken the words aloud. Black Eagle pulled back to look at her, his dark eyes intense. "And I love you," he replied, his voice rough with emotion. "You are my heart, Rachel. Without you, I am empty." They kissed as snow fell around them, 2 people clinging to each other against an uncertain future. And somewhere behind them in the white wilderness, 50 soldiers grew steadily closer. The 3rd day of their flight brought a decision that would change everything. Chief Red Cloud called a halt in a narrow valley where steep hills rose on either side, offering some protection from the wind and a defensible position if it came to fighting. The council of elders and warriors gathered while the rest of the tribe huddled around small, carefully concealed fires. Rachel watched from where she sat with Singing Bird, her stomach tight with dread. She could see Black Eagle's animated gestures as he spoke to the council, could sense the urgency in his movements. After nearly an hour of heated discussion, the group dispersed, and Black Eagle came directly to her. "The council has decided," he said without preamble, crouching before her so their eyes were level. A group of warriors will split off from the main party tonight. We will lay a false trail leading east, away from the direction the tribe will travel. With luck, the soldiers will follow us instead of the women and children." Rachel's blood ran cold. "You are going with them." "I must," Black Eagle said, taking her hands in his. "I am one of the best trackers, and the younger warriors look to me for leadership. Red Cloud needs me to do this." "How many warriors?" Rachel asked, though she was not sure she wanted to know the answer. 12, Black Eagle replied. 12 against 50 soldiers. Rachel's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "That is suicide." "It is strategy," Black Eagle corrected firmly. "We will not engage them directly. We will lead them on a chase through difficult terrain, slow them down, confuse their trail. By the time they realize they have been deceived, the tribe will have gained days of distance." Rachel wanted to scream at him, to forbid him from going, to demand he stay with her where it was safer. But she had learned enough of Lakota culture to know that such protests would dishonor him. A warrior who refused his duty out of fear for his own life or comfort would lose the respect of his people. And Black Eagle valued honor above all else, even above his own survival. "When do you leave?" she asked instead, proud that her voice remained steady. 2 hours after sunset, Black Eagle said. "We leave under cover of darkness so the main camp's movements are not compromised." He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "I will come back to you, Rachel. I swear it on everything I hold sacred. Do not make promises you cannot keep," Rachel whispered, her eyes burning with unshed tears. "Just promise me you will try. Promise me you will be careful." "I promise," Black Eagle said, and kissed her with a desperate intensity that spoke of all the words they did not have time to say. The next 2 hours passed in a blur. Rachel helped Black Eagle prepare his supplies, packing dried meat and corn cakes, checking his weapons, mending a small tear in his buckskin shirt with hands that trembled despite her best efforts. They spoke little, but every glance carried the weight of everything they might never have the chance to say. Singing Bird found Rachel as the sun set, painting the snow-covered valley in shades of orange and purple. The older woman carried a small leather pouch, which she pressed into Rachel's hands. "Medicine herbs," she explained. "For wounds, fever, pain. Keep them close. You may need them." The implication was clear. Black Eagle might return injured if he returned at all. Rachel clutched the pouch tightly. "Thank you." Singing Bird studied her face for a long moment. "You love him greatly. This is good. Love makes us strong, even when it also makes us vulnerable." "I feel only vulnerable right now," Rachel admitted. "That is because you have not yet learned to trust your own strength," Singing Bird said. "You think you are weak because you feel fear. But it takes greater courage to feel fear and continue forward than to feel nothing at all." Before Rachel could respond, Black Eagle emerged from their shelter, fully armed and ready to depart. 11 other warriors gathered near him, their faces painted for war despite the fact that they hoped to avoid direct conflict. Tall Elk was among them, Rachel noted, and the hostile young warrior pointedly refused to look in her direction. Chief Red Cloud addressed the group in Lakota, his words formal and ceremonial. Rachel understood enough to know he was blessing their journey, asking the spirits to guide their path and bring them safely home. When he finished, each warrior embraced family members in farewell. Some of the younger men had wives and children who clung to them with desperate intensity. Black Eagle came to Rachel last. He cupped her face in his hands, his dark eyes memorizing every detail of her features. "Be safe," he said simply. "Stay close to Singing Bird. Do what Red Cloud tells you. And if something happens to me, nothing will happen to you," Rachel interrupted fiercely. "You are too stubborn to die." A brief smile touched his lips. "Perhaps. But if fate decides otherwise, I want you to know that these past months with you have been the happiest of my life. You took my frozen heart and made it beat again. Stop talking as if you are already dead." Rachel said, her voice breaking. "You are going to come back to me, and we are going to reach the bighorns together, and we are going to have a life." "Yes," Black Eagle agreed, though his eyes held a shadow of doubt. "Yes, we will." He kissed her one final time, then pulled away before she could stop him. Rachel watched through tears as he mounted his painted stallion and rode out of the valley with the other warriors, disappearing into the darkness like ghosts. Long after they were gone, she stood staring at the empty space where he had been, her heart aching with a fear she had never known before. Singing Bird eventually coaxed her back to the fire, wrapping a buffalo robe around her shoulders. "He will return," the older woman said with more confidence than Rachel felt. "Black Eagle is clever and strong. He has survived many dangers, but never for me," Rachel said softly. "Before, he had nothing to lose. Now he has a reason to be careful, which might make him hesitate at a crucial moment, or it might make him fight harder to survive," Singing Bird countered. "Do not borrow tomorrow's sorrows today. Tonight you rest. Tomorrow we continue north, but rest proved impossible." Rachel lay awake beneath the buffalo robes, her mind conjuring endless scenarios of what might be happening to Black Eagle and his warriors. Were they successfully laying the false trail? Had the soldiers discovered the deception? Was Black Eagle injured, dying, calling for her? She must have eventually dozed because she woke with a start to find dawn breaking over the valley. The camp was already stirring, families preparing to resume their journey. Rachel felt hollow with exhaustion and worry, but she forced herself to eat a few bites of corn cake and help pack their remaining belongings. Without the warriors, the column seemed smaller, more vulnerable. Red Cloud had assigned the few remaining men, mostly older warriors past their prime fighting years, to guard the flanks. But everyone knew that if the soldiers caught up to them now, they had little hope of mounting an effective defense. The fourth day of travel brought them into rougher terrain. The gentle rolling plains gave way to broken country, cut through with ravines and studded with rocky outcroppings. The going was slower, but Red Cloud insisted they press on. Every mile they gained was another mile between them and potential pursuit. Rachel rode in a daze, her body going through the motions while her mind remained fixed on Black Eagle. She imagined she could feel him through some mystical connection, sense whether he was alive or dead. But there was nothing, only the empty ache of his absence. On the fifth day, a scout returned with news. The soldiers had indeed followed the false trail laid by Black Eagle and his warriors. The main column had been granted precious time, but there was no word of Black Eagle himself or the fate of his group. Rachel did not know whether to feel relief or increased anxiety. Singing Bird tried to distract her with tasks and conversation, but Rachel could barely focus. She helped with the children, gathered firewood when they stopped to rest, tended to an elderly woman's frost-damaged feet. But all of it felt mechanical, performed by a body whose spirit had ridden away into the darkness 5 nights ago. The weather turned even colder as they climbed into the foothills of the Bighorn Mountains. Snow fell almost constantly now, sometimes light flurries, sometimes blinding storms that forced them to stop and wait for visibility to improve. Supplies were running dangerously low despite careful rationing. Hunters went out each day but returned with little game. The animals had taken shelter from the brutal weather. On the 8th day, they reached a protected valley that Red Cloud declared would serve as their winter camp. It was not ideal, but it offered water from a half-frozen stream, some grazing for the horses, and steep walls that would break the worst of the winter winds. The tribe set about establishing the camp with weary determination. Rachel worked alongside the other women, helping to set up teepees and organize the dwindling supplies. But her eyes constantly scanned the southern horizon, watching for any sign of returning warriors. Each day that passed without word made the knot of fear in her chest tighten further. It was Tall Elk's wife, a quiet woman named Mourning Dove, who finally voiced what everyone was thinking. "They are not coming back, she said flatly as she and Rachel worked together to scrape a deer hide. "The soldiers have killed them all." "You do not know that," Rachel replied, though the words felt hollow even to her own ears. "We would have heard something. Red Cloud's scouts would have found signs. The scouts have found nothing because there is nothing to find," Mourning Dove said, her voice brittle with suppressed grief. "Our men are dead, and we are alone." Rachel wanted to argue, to insist that Black Eagle was alive, that he would return. But doubt had been eating away at her hope with each passing day. It had been nearly 2 weeks since the warriors had ridden away. How long could 12 men evade 50 soldiers? How long before their luck ran out? That night, Rachel could not sleep. She lay in the teepee she now shared with Singing Bird and 2 other widows, staring at the smoke hole above and watching sparks from the fire drift up toward the stars. She thought about her life before, the pampered existence in Philadelphia that had seemed so important at the time. She thought about the wagon train west, the brutal raid that had stolen her old life away. And she thought about Black Eagle, the fierce warrior who had hated her at first sight, but had somehow become her entire world. She must have finally fallen into an exhausted sleep because she woke suddenly to the sound of shouting outside. Her first thought was that the soldiers had found them, and she scrambled for the knife Black Eagle had given her. But the shouts were not of alarm, but of excitement. Rachel burst from the teepee to find the entire camp awake and moving toward the southern edge of the valley. Dawn was just breaking, painting the snow-covered ground in shades of pink and gold. And there, silhouetted against the rising sun, were riders approaching. Rachel's heart leaped into her throat. She pushed through the crowd, not caring who she shoved aside, her eyes desperately scanning the approaching figures. There were only 7 riders instead of 12, and they moved slowly, several slumped in their saddles. But leading them, sitting tall and proud on his painted stallion despite obvious exhaustion, was Black Eagle. Rachel ran. She did not remember making the conscious decision to move. Her legs simply carried her forward, her feet flying over the snow-covered ground. Black Eagle saw her coming and dismounted in one fluid motion despite his weariness. They collided in the middle of the valley, Rachel throwing herself into his arms with such force that he staggered backward. "You are alive," she sobbed against his chest, her hands roaming over him as if to verify his solidity. "You are alive." Black Eagle held her so tightly she could barely breathe, his face buried in her hair. "I promised I would return," he said, his voice rough with emotion and exhaustion. "I keep my promises." Around them, the other warriors were being welcomed by their families. Rachel became aware of the conspicuous absence of 5 men. Including Tall Elk, Mourning Dove's prediction had been partially correct after all. But in that moment, with Black Eagle's arms around her and his heart beating steadily beneath her ear, Rachel could only feel overwhelming gratitude. He was alive. He had come back to her. Everything else could wait. Chief Red Cloud approached, his weathered face showing both relief and sorrow for those who had not returned. He spoke to Black Eagle in Lakota, and Rachel understood enough to know he was asking for a report. Black Eagle responded, still holding Rachel against his side, as if afraid to let her go. The story came out in pieces over the next hours as the returned warriors rested and ate and shared their tale. They had successfully laid a false trail that the soldiers had followed for 3 days. But the cavalry commander had been cleverer than expected. He had split his force, sending 20 men to follow the false trail while the remainder continued to track the main group. Black Eagle and his warriors had realized the deception too late. They had been forced to engage the soldiers in a running battle through the foothills, using guerrilla tactics to harass and delay the cavalry. 5 warriors had died in those skirmishes, including Tall Elk, who had charged a group of soldiers single-handedly in a futile attempt to prove his bravery. But Black Eagle's strategy had ultimately succeeded. The warriors had led the soldiers deep into treacherous terrain where winter storms had trapped them. By the time Black Eagle's group had slipped away, The cavalry had been struggling simply to survive, let alone continue pursuit. It would be weeks before they could safely withdraw from the mountains, and by then the trail would be long cold. Rachel listened to the tale while tending to Black Eagle's injuries. He had been grazed by a bullet across his left shoulder, and he bore various cuts and bruises from the hard riding and fighting. But he was alive and whole, and that was all that mattered. As she cleaned and dressed his wound using the herbs Singing Bird had given her, Rachel felt his eyes on her face. "What are you thinking?" he asked quietly. Rachel paused, considering her answer. "I am thinking that I never want to feel what I felt these past 2 weeks again. I am thinking that life is too short and too uncertain to waste even a moment. And I am thinking that I am grateful beyond words to whatever spirits watched over you." Black Eagle caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. "I thought of you every moment. When the bullets flew past my head, when we rode until the horses could barely stand, when I did not know if I would see another sunrise. The thought of you gave me strength to continue. Do not ever leave me like that again," Rachel said fiercely. Black Eagle smiled, though exhaustion was evident in every line of his face. "I cannot promise that, my heart. Life among the Lakota is uncertain. There will be other dangers, other battles. Then I will face them with you," Rachel declared. "Never again will I sit helpless while you ride into danger. I will learn to fight, to shoot, to defend myself and our people." "You would make a fierce warrior," Black Eagle said, his eyes warm with admiration and love. "But I think perhaps you already are one. You fought the greatest battle of all these past weeks, the battle against despair and fear. And you won." Rachel leaned forward and kissed him gently, mindful of his injuries. "We both won. We are both alive. That is enough for now." As the winter camp settled into its new routine, and the tribe began the work of surviving the harsh season ahead, Rachel and Black Eagle found moments of peace stolen from the hardship around them. They had been tested by separation and danger, and had emerged stronger for it. Mourning Dove sought out Rachel a few days after the warrior's return. The woman's eyes were red from weeping for her dead husband, but her expression was apologetic. "I spoke harshly to you before," she said. "I said they were all dead. I am glad I was wrong, at least for some." Rachel embraced her, feeling the other woman's grief as if it were her own. "I am sorry for your loss. Tall Elk died bravely. He died foolishly," Mourning Dove corrected bitterly. "He died trying to prove something that did not need proving. And now my children have no father." There was nothing Rachel could say to ease that pain. She simply held Mourning Dove while the woman wept, offering the only comfort she could. The silent solidarity of one woman to another in their shared experience of loving warriors who faced death as casually as others faced the dawn. As the first month in their winter camp drew to a close, Rachel reflected on how far she had come from the terrified captive who had knelt in the dirt that first day. She had found love in the most unlikely place, had discovered strength she never knew she possessed, and had forged a new identity that honored both her past and her present. The future remained uncertain. The conflict between the Lakota and the encroaching settlers would not simply disappear. More battles lay ahead, more hard choices, more losses. But whatever came, Rachel knew she would face it standing beside Black Eagle, her husband, her heart, her home. Winter settled over the Bighorn Mountains with an iron grip that tested every member of the tribe. The protected valley that Chief Red Cloud had chosen proved its worth as storms raged overhead, their fury broken by the steep walls that surrounded the camp. But protection from wind did not mean protection from cold, and the temperatures plunged to depths that made even the hardiest warriors reluctant to venture far from their fires. Rachel had never known cold like this. In Philadelphia, winter had meant staying indoors by warm fireplaces, wearing multiple layers of silk and wool, sipping hot chocolate while snow fell picturesquely outside frosted windows. Here, winter meant survival. It meant waking each morning to find frost on the inside of the teepee covering. Meant rationing food carefully because hunting was nearly impossible. Meant huddling together for warmth and praying the supply of firewood would last until spring. But Rachel also discovered unexpected beauty in the harsh season. The mountains transformed into a landscape of pristine white, the snow sparkling like diamonds under the pale winter sun. Icicles hung from rock formations like crystal chandeliers, and the night sky blazed with stars so bright and numerous they seemed close enough to touch. On clear nights, the northern lights sometimes danced across the heavens in ribbons of green and purple. And singing bird would tell stories about the spirits of ancestors dancing in the sky. Black Eagle recovered fully from his injuries within a few weeks, though he bore new scars to add to the collection that mapped his life as a warrior. He spent his days hunting when weather permitted, bringing back rabbits and the occasional deer to supplement the tribe's dwindling stores. He also began teaching Rachel the skills she had demanded to learn, showing her how to string and shoot a bow, how to track game through snow, how to read the signs of approaching weather in the clouds and wind. "You have a good eye," he observed one afternoon as Rachel's arrow struck close to the center of the target they had set up. Better than many warriors when they first begin training. Rachel knocked another arrow, feeling the strain in her shoulders from the unfamiliar exercise. "I had an excellent teacher and strong motivation to learn." She released the arrow, watching with satisfaction as it flew true and struck even closer to the center. Black Eagle moved behind her, his hands adjusting her stance slightly. "Your form is improving, but you still favor your right side too much. Balance is essential." His breath was warm against her ear, and Rachel found her concentration wavering for entirely different reasons. She turned in his arms, the bow forgotten. "Perhaps we should continue this lesson later." Black Eagle smiled, a sight that still made Rachel's heart skip despite seeing it more frequently now. "You are easily distracted, wife." "Only by you," Rachel replied. Rising on her toes to kiss him, they were interrupted by a shout from the camp. Black Eagle's demeanor shifted instantly from playful husband to alert warrior, his hand moving to the knife at his belt. Together, they hurried back toward the teepees to find a commotion near the southern entrance to the valley. 3 strangers on horseback had approached the camp, and the sentries had stopped them at a safe distance. Rachel's breath caught as she recognized the style of their clothing. They were white men, trappers by the look of their fur-lined coats and pack animals. It was the first time since her capture that she had seen anyone from her former world. Chief Red Cloud emerged from his teepee, his presence commanding immediate respect. Black Eagle moved to stand at his uncle's right hand, and Rachel followed, her heart pounding with a complex mixture of emotions she could not quite name. The trappers dismounted and approached on foot, their hands visible and empty of weapons in a gesture of peace. The leader was a grizzled man in his 50s with a salt and pepper beard and shrewd eyes that took in every detail of the camp. "We mean no harm," he called out in accented but understandable Lakota. "We seek shelter from the storm that comes. 3 days only, then we go." Red Cloud regarded them impassively for a long moment before responding in English, surprising everyone. "You know our language. This is good. But why should we trust white men in our camp? Your people hunt us like animals." The trapper's expression grew solemn. "Not all white men are the same, just as not all Lakota are the same. I am called Mountain Jack. I have lived in these territories for 30 years, long before the settlements came. I have traded fairly with your people, never stolen, never killed except in defense. Some of your elders will remember me." An older warrior stepped forward and spoke rapidly in Lakota. Red Cloud listened, then nodded slowly. "Red Fox says you traded with us 15 winters ago. Says you kept your word when others did not." Mountain Jack inclined his head respectfully. "Red Fox has a good memory. I traded for furs and gave fair value. I seek only to do the same now, shelter for goods." Red Cloud considered this, then gestured toward an empty space near the edge of camp. 3 days. You camp there. You do not wander through our village. You do not speak to our women without permission. You break these rules, you leave immediately. Agreed, Mountain Jack said. He glanced at his companions, 2 younger men who had remained silent throughout the exchange. We are grateful for your hospitality. As the trappers led their horses to the designated area, Rachel became aware of Black Eagle's tension beside her. His jaw was clenched tight, and his hand had not moved from his knife. You do not trust them, she said quietly. I trust no white men, except under the most controlled circumstances, Black Eagle replied. And even then, barely, Rachel understood his caution, but felt an unexpected pull toward the trappers. They represented a connection to her past, a reminder of the world she had left behind. Part of her wanted to approach them, to speak English with someone other than Black Eagle, to hear news of the settlements and the territories beyond these mountains. But she remained at Black Eagle's side, respecting his wariness. That evening, as promised, Mountain Jack brought goods to trade. He had coffee, sugar, and flour, luxuries the tribe had not seen in months. He also had ammunition, knives, and warm wool blankets. In exchange, he sought furs and any knowledge about the best trapping grounds in the surrounding mountains. The trading was conducted formally, with Red Cloud overseeing every transaction to ensure fairness. Rachel watched from a distance, noting how Mountain Jack's eyes occasionally drifted toward her. She knew she must look strange to him, a white woman dressed in full Lakota clothing, standing beside one of the tribe's most prominent warriors. Finally, Mountain Jack addressed her directly. Begging your pardon, ma'am, but are you here of your own free will? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Every eye in the gathered crowd turned to Rachel. She felt Black Eagle tense beside her, felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders. How she answered would speak volumes about her loyalty, about where her true allegiances lay. Rachel stepped forward, meeting Mountain Jack's gaze directly. I am Rachel Price, originally of Philadelphia. I was taken from a wagon train 7 months ago. She saw Black Eagle's hand clench into a fist, saw uncertainty flash across his face. But she continued, I am now the wife of Black Eagle, nephew to Chief Red Cloud. I am here by my own choice. And I ask that you respect that choice. Mountain Jack studied her face for a long moment, clearly trying to determine if she was being coerced. That's a mighty strange choice for a white woman to make. If you don't mind my saying, I do not mind, Rachel replied calmly. But strange or not, it is mine to make. I have found a home here, a purpose, and a man I love. I have no desire to return to the world I left behind. The trapper nodded slowly, though skepticism remained in his eyes. If you say so, ma'am. But if you were to change your mind, my companions and I could escort you to Fort Laramie. There are people there who could help you get back to Philadelphia. I will not change my mind, Rachel said firmly. But I thank you for the offer. Mountain Jack tipped his hat to her and returned his attention to the trading. But Rachel could feel the ripples her declaration had sent through the camp. The Lakota who had still harbored doubts about her commitment now had their answer. She had publicly chosen them over her own people that night. Black Eagle held her with an intensity that bordered on desperation. When you said you were taken from a wagon train, I thought, he paused, struggling with emotions he rarely allowed himself to show. I thought perhaps you would leave with them. Rachel cupped his face in her hands, making him meet her eyes. Did you truly believe that? After everything we have been through, everything we have become to each other. Fear is not always logical, Black Eagle admitted. The thought of losing you tears at my heart in ways I cannot explain. Then let me explain something to you, Rachel said softly. I did not choose you because I had no other options. I chose you because you are my heart, my home, my future. The life I had before was empty, a series of pretty rooms and meaningless social obligations. Here, with you, I am alive in ways I never was in Philadelphia." Black Eagle kissed her then, deep and searching, as if trying to imprint her words on his soul. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I do not deserve you. That is not for you to decide," Rachel replied with a smile. "I have chosen you, and you are stuck with me. I can think of worse fates," Black Eagle murmured. Pulling her close again, the trappers stayed there 3 days as agreed, then departed with full packs of furs and repeated assurances of discretion about the camp's location. Mountain Jack paused before mounting his horse, fixing Rachel with a thoughtful look. "You're braver than most, Mrs. Price, or perhaps just wiser. I've seen what passes for civilization in the settlements, and I'm not always sure it's worth what it costs." "Thank you," Rachel said, surprised by the compliment. "Safe travels, Mountain Jack." As the trappers disappeared into the forest, Rachel felt a door closing on her past. She had been given a clear opportunity to return to her former life and had rejected it without hesitation. There was freedom in that finality, a sense of peace that came from knowing exactly where she belonged. Winter gradually loosened its grip as the weeks passed. The days grew imperceptibly longer, and occasionally the temperature climbed above freezing, creating treacherous ice but also hope that spring was coming. The tribe had survived the harshest months through careful management of resources and communal support, though they had lost 3 elders to sickness and cold. One morning in early March, Rachel woke feeling strange. Her stomach churned uneasily, and she barely made it outside the teepee before losing what little she had eaten the night before. Singing Bird found her there, pale and shaking, and immediately began asking pointed questions in Lakota. When Rachel answered honestly, Singing Bird's weathered face broke into a wide smile. She called for Black Eagle, who emerged from the teepee with concern written across his features. "What is wrong? Is Rachel ill?" "Not ill," Singing Bird said, switching to English so Rachel could understand. "With child. 3 moons, maybe 4. Black Eagle's expression transformed from concern to wonder to joy in the space of a heartbeat. He dropped to his knees beside Rachel, his hands hovering over her as if she had suddenly become fragile as glass. "A child?" "We are having a child," Rachel nodded, tears streaming down her face, though whether from joy, fear, or lingering nausea, she could not say. "It seems so." Black Eagle let out a whoop of joy that brought half the camp running. Within moments, they were surrounded by well-wishers, offering congratulations and advice. Chief Red Cloud embraced his nephew with obvious pride, declaring that this child would be a blessing on the entire tribe. As the excitement died down and they returned to their teepee, Black Eagle pulled Rachel into his arms with infinite gentleness. "You are happy about this?" he asked, suddenly uncertain. "I know we have not discussed children. I am terrified," Rachel admitted. "I know nothing about birthing babies or raising children, especially here where everything is so different from what I knew. But yes, I am happy. Deeply, profoundly happy." Black Eagle placed his hand over her still flat stomach, his expression one of awe. "A child of 2 worlds. Neither fully Lakota nor fully white, but something new. Something that belongs to the future rather than the past. Our child will need to be strong," Rachel said softly. "The world we are bringing them into is not kind to those who exist between cultures. Then we will teach them to be stronger than the world," Black Eagle replied firmly. "We will teach them the best of both peoples, the courage and connection to the land of the Lakota, the knowledge and adaptability of the whites. They will be equipped to build bridges where we have only managed to dig trenches." Rachel leaned into his embrace, feeling a fierce protectiveness for the tiny life growing inside her. "I am afraid," she confessed, "of childbirth, of raising a child in these uncertain times, of all the things that could go wrong. Fear is natural," Black Eagle said. "But you have already proven yourself braver than you know. You faced a charging bear to save my life. You chose love over safety. chose a hard life among strangers over the comfort of your own people. You will face motherhood with the same courage. As spring finally arrived in earnest, melting the snow and coaxing new growth from the frozen earth, the tribe began making plans for the summer. They could not stay in the winter valley year-round. They would need to move to better hunting grounds, closer to the rivers where fish would be running. Rachel's pregnancy progressed, her body changing in ways that amazed and sometimes frightened her. Singing Bird proved an invaluable guide, explaining what to expect, preparing the herbs and remedies that would be needed for the birth, teaching Rachel the traditional ways of Lakota childbirth. The other women of the tribe, especially those who had children of their own, embraced Rachel fully now. She was no longer the white captive or even just Black Eagle's wife. She was a mother-to-be, one of them in the most fundamental way, Mourning Dove, who had been cold to Rachel after Tall Elk's death, gradually thawed. One afternoon, she approached Rachel with a small bundle. "My mother made this for my first child," she said, unwrapping a beautifully crafted cradle board decorated with intricate beadwork. "Tall Elk and I will have no more children. I would like your baby to have it." Rachel accepted the gift with tears in her eyes, understanding the depth of generosity and healing the gesture represented. "Thank you. I will treasure this always. Tall Elk died because of his own pride and anger," Mourning Dove said quietly. "But before he left on that last ride, he told me he had been wrong about you. He said you had more Lakota spirit than many who were born to the tribe." It was perhaps the greatest compliment Rachel had received since arriving in the camp. All the more precious because it came from such an unexpected source. As summer approached and Rachel's belly swelled with new life, Black Eagle became almost comically overprotective. He refused to let her lift anything heavy, insisted she rest frequently, and personally selected the softest furs for her to sleep on. Rachel tolerated his fussing with good-natured amusement, understanding that it came from a place of deep love and perhaps a touch of masculine anxiety about the mysterious process of creating life. "I am pregnant, not dying," she teased him one afternoon when he physically lifted her over a small stream rather than let her wade through it. "I am perfectly capable of getting my own feet wet." "You are carrying my child," Black Eagle replied with mock seriousness. "You are the most precious thing in my world." "I will not take chances," Rachel laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. "What will you do when I go into labor? Pace outside the birth lodge like a nervous colt?" "Probably," Black Eagle admitted with his self-deprecating smile. "Singing Bird has already warned me that I will not be allowed inside. Apparently, husbands are useless during childbirth." "I am certain that is not true," Rachel said, though secretly she was relieved. The thought of giving birth was frightening enough without worrying about Black Eagle's reaction to seeing her in pain. In late August, when the prairie grasses had turned golden and the air carried the first hint of autumn's approach, Rachel's labor began. It started as a dull ache in her lower back, gradually intensifying into waves of pain that took her breath away. Singing Bird recognized the signs immediately and hustled Rachel to the birth lodge, a teepee set aside specifically for women giving birth. The next hours blurred into a haze of pain, encouragement from the women attending her, and an exhaustion deeper than anything Rachel had ever experienced. Singing Bird remained at her side throughout, offering water, wiping her brow, murmuring words of comfort in Lakota that Rachel only partially understood but found soothing nonetheless. Outside the birth lodge, Black Eagle did indeed pace like a nervous colt, wearing a path in the grass. Chief Red Cloud found him there and sat him down forcibly. "You dishonor your wife with this display of worry," the old chief said firmly. "She is strong. She will survive this. You cannot know that," Black Eagle replied, his voice raw with fear. "Women die in childbirth. Strong women, weak women, it does not matter. My own mother," he could not finish the sentence. Red Cloud placed a weathered hand on his nephew's shoulder. Your mother was ill long before your sister was born. Rachel is healthy, young and determined. She has Singing Bird with her, who has delivered more babies than can be counted. Have faith." As the sun set and the stars emerged, a cry split the night air. But it was not Rachel's cry. It was the lusty wail of a newborn infant announcing its arrival into the world. Black Eagle leaped to his feet, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst from his chest. Singing Bird emerged from the birth lodge, her face creased in a smile. "You have a son," she announced. "And your wife as well." Though very tired, Black Eagle did not wait for permission. He pushed past Singing Bird into the lodge, his eyes immediately finding Rachel. She lay on soft furs, her hair damp with sweat, her face pale with exhaustion. But she was smiling, and in her arms, wrapped in soft rabbit fur, was a tiny red-faced infant. "Meet your son," Rachel said softly, her voice hoarse from hours of labor. Black Eagle approached slowly, almost reverently, as if he might break the spell if he moved too quickly. He knelt beside Rachel and looked down at the baby for the first time. The infant had stopped crying and was now staring up with unfocused dark eyes, his tiny fist waving in the air. "He is perfect," Black Eagle whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "You are perfect," Rachel laughed weakly. "I feel anything but perfect right now. But he is worth it." Black Eagle gently touched his son's impossibly small hand, marveling when the tiny fingers closed around his own much larger finger with surprising strength. "He will be strong," Black Eagle predicted. "Like his mother, and wise like his father," Rachel added. They sat together in the quiet lodge, the three of them forming a family unit that had seemed impossible less than a year ago. A white woman, a Lakota warrior, and their child who embodied the best hope of both worlds. "What shall we name him?" Rachel asked after a while. Black Eagle considered this carefully. Names were important in Lakota culture, often earned through deeds or given to commemorate significant events. "I would like to call him Bridgewalker," he said finally, "because he will walk between two worlds, bringing them closer together." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Bridgewalker. It is perfect. As news of the birth spread through the camp, well-wishers began arriving with gifts. Small tokens, mostly, items that families could ill afford to spare, but offered anyway out of genuine affection and respect. Food, clothing, protective amulets, and blessings. Chief Red Cloud came to see his great-nephew, his weathered face soft with wonder as he held the tiny infant. "This child carries the future of our people," he said solemnly. "Not just the Lakota, but all people. He is proof that different worlds can create something beautiful together." In the days following Bridgewalker's birth, Rachel recovered her strength slowly. She marveled at the fierce love she felt for her son, an emotion so powerful it sometimes frightened her with its intensity. She would die for this child without hesitation, would kill to protect him, would endure any hardship to see him safe and happy. Black Eagle proved to be a devoted father, spending every moment he could spare with his son. Rachel often woke in the night to find him simply watching the baby sleep, his expression one of pure wonder. "I never thought I could feel this way," he confessed one night. "When my uncle first told me I must marry you, I was filled with rage and resentment. I could not imagine feeling anything but contempt for a white woman. And now," Rachel prompted, though she knew the answer, "now I cannot imagine my life without you," Black Eagle said simply. "You and our son are everything to me. You have taught me that love can overcome hatred, that understanding can bridge even the widest divide." Rachel reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. "We have been fortunate. Not everyone from our two peoples will find what we have found, but some will," Black Eagle replied. "And those who do will show others that it is possible. Bridgewalker will grow up knowing both worlds, and perhaps he will teach his own children to do the same." Change comes slowly, but it does come. As autumn deepened and the tribe prepared for another winter, Rachel reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. She had been stolen from one life and thrust unwillingly into another. She had been rejected, scorned, and treated as property. But through courage and determination, and with the unexpected gift of love, she had forged a new identity that honored both her past and her present. The future remained uncertain. The conflict between settlers and native peoples would continue, perhaps for generations. There would be more battles, more losses, more heartbreak. But there would also be moments of beauty, instances of understanding, and children like Bridge Walker who carried within them the possibility of a different future. One evening, as the first snow of the season began to fall, Rachel stood outside their teepee with Bridge Walker bundled against her chest. Black Eagle came to stand beside her, his arm wrapping around her shoulders. Together, they watched the snow paint the world white, a blank canvas on which anything might be written. "Are you happy?" Black Eagle asked softly. Rachel leaned into him, feeling the solid strength of his body, the steady beat of his heart. "Yes," she answered simply. "Despite everything, despite all the hardship and uncertainty, I am happy." "Good," Black Eagle said, kissing the top of her head. "Because I intend to spend the rest of my life making certain you stay that way." Rachel smiled, looking down at their sleeping son. "We will face whatever comes together, the three of us. And we will teach Bridgewalker to be brave, to be kind, and to build bridges instead of walls." "He could have no better teacher than you," Black Eagle said. "You have built the greatest bridge of all, between your heart and mine." As the snow continued to fall and the night deepened around them, Rachel Price, once a captive and now a willing member of the Lakota people, held her family close and looked toward a future filled with both challenge and hope. She had saved a warrior from a charging bear, and in doing so had saved herself from a life half-lived. And in the end, that made all the difference.
Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.